What's going on, guys? Welcome to something a little bit different. Me and Spade decided we are going to take a look at the new Star Wars Visions anime that came out recently. I had some passing interest in this because it is, it's basically what this is different anime studios basically doing these different stories set in the Star Wars universe, but it pretty much plays fast and loose with the lore. Like it's not really constrained by canon or lore or anything like that. It's pretty much just these different studios and different directors, these creators' visions of Star Wars, and it can pretty much, as long as it really just has like lightsabers and space battles and stuff like that. I mean, that's all it really for some of these really needed to have to even, I guess, be considered Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, of course, with me as always, I have Blue Spade.
Yeah, for me, when I first heard about this, I had some mild expectations. Wondering what this is. I mean, I did hear that that different anime studios were. This was going to be like an anthology series for for Star Wars, but then we heard a little bit later that none of these stories were going to be bound to canon. So that kind of piqued my interest in a little bit, considering like and how they're going to end up pulling this off. And then once it came out, I thought it kind of sort of surpassed my expectations a little bit. There were some episodes here and there that were better than others, of course, and there were some I think that that could be worked around to have maybe be part of a second season if that's even possible.
Yeah, because some of these episodes that do kind of leave off on a bit of a cliffhanger or just leave things unresolved. So, yeah, I mean, it almost seems like with some of these they were planning to maybe do a continuation or something. But I also would say that I kind of like that it's not constrained by canon or lore or anything like that, because it feels like it gives these studios, I guess, more creative freedom to do whatever they want with like the characters in the story and also the setting. Because there are a lot of like some of these like are pretty much just set in like feudal Japan, but are with the spin of it being like Star Wars.
Well, a lot of these things are like Japanese influence.
Right.
Like, I mean, the lightsabers themselves look like katanas and just regular lightsabers.
Yeah, well, so Star Wars was originally influenced, like one of the main influences was like Akira Kurosawa movies, specifically The Hidden Fortress, and I think to some extent like Seven Samurai. So it makes sense. I mean, and well, speaking of which, the first episode in particular is very obviously very heavily inspired by Kurosawa, considering like the art style and just the way everything looks. It's pretty much just an old Kurosawa movie.
Yeah, so the first episode is called The Duel, and it's animated by Kamikaze Doga. Now, there is one other film that's made by Kamikaze Doga, and it's called Batman Ninja. And it's pretty much based on the similar animation style that this uses, which is like almost a CG anime sort of like animation style that they used for their characters. Only this time this is mostly showcased in black and white, with the exceptions of parts where the lightsabers have color and stuff.
I will say I was initially a little bit off put by the CG, but it quickly grew on me because it's not bad CG. It's actually I would say it's actually pretty cleverly used.
Yeah, so the episode itself, I mean, it doesn't specifically say when this takes place, but it just focuses on like this lone wanderer called Ronin, and he just basically just walks into town, and then all of a sudden, like, these bandits wearing pieces of stormtrooper armor start ransacking the town, and they're being led by like this bandit leader who's like some kind of Sith Inquisitor with a heavily modified umbrella-looking lightsaber, which it looks cool and all. I'll give it that. And then the fight, then it culminates into this final fight between the Ronin and the Inquisitor, dueling each other. Of course, we find out that the Ronin can use force powers, but he has a red-bladed lightsaber, similar to the Inquisitor.
Yeah, they don't really go into it, but I'm guessing maybe the Lone Wanderer was maybe like a deserter of the Imperials, or like maybe he used to be like a Sith Jedi, but he's no longer one anymore. Yeah.
I mean, the duel itself was pretty well done, in my opinion. It pretty much fought inside the village until they fight down by the riverside, and then it pretty much ends with the Ronin setting up a trap for the Inquisitor, and you're just impaling her in the end.
Yeah, the trap is, of course, basically like he has like an R2 unit with him, and it's pretty much just like when he pushes a button, it comes to his aid and gets rid of some of the troopers that have occupied the village.
Yeah, and then of course at the end of it, the villagers are thankful for what the Ronin has done. And what's unique about him is like each time he ends up killing like an Inquisitor or a dark side user, he ends up taking one of their red kyber crystals. And of course, like we see like inside of his robes that he's killed at least a dozen of them. And before he's about to take it himself, he decides to just give that one kyber crystal to, I guess you could say, the head of the village. So they give, I guess they're just basically use it as currency to help repair the damage to the town. So soon after that, the Ronin ends up leaving town, and then that's where the episode ends.
Yeah, it was, this is a shorter one too. These episodes tend to range from like 12 to like 20 minutes. But I think this one didn't really waste any time. Like it pretty much like had some pretty good pacing and really good fight scenes, and I just really liked the whole art style of it. Yeah, I thought this is definitely like, I would have to say probably my favorite out of all of these. The other ones are good. There are some other good ones too, but I would say this one I probably enjoyed the most.
Yeah, it definitely like is more reminiscent to like of the old classic samurai films from the old days. But yeah, I think this was one of the best of the 9 that they released, and fitting that it ends up being the first episode. Yeah. But I would feel, I feel like it would have been more fitting had this been the last episode of the collection. But yeah, so the next episode, called Tattooing Rhapsody, made by Studio Colorado. It's I mean, it wasn't bad, but it's not. It wasn't. I don't know. It just seemed like silly, at the same time.
I really didn't care much for like the animation. Everything was good, but I just didn't care much for the character designs. They were all like these chibi-looking characters.
Yeah,
and also the plot. It's basically about a rock band, and we find out one of the members of the band is like a Hutt, and he pretty much is taken back by Boba Fett to the Hutt's palace to, I guess, be the successor for the Hutts.
Yeah, of course, the Hutt band member just refuses to join the crime syndicate, so that's why he's being taken by Boba Fett. Now, I have a question. Did you watch this in dub, or did you?
I watched all of them in dub.
Okay, because we need to point out that Boba Fett is, of course, voiced by Temuera Morrison in this episode, which is, I think, one of the only good things on this episode, because, I mean, we get to hear him again as playing the character, and of course, to hype up the fact that Morrison is going to play as Boba Fett again in the Book of Boba Fett that's coming out in this December. But anyway, this, there's nothing more to say about this episode. I mean, the lead band member, I think he used to be like a Jedi running away from Order 66, and he just somehow forms a band with all these other characters, and then they end up saving their band member by performing in front of Jabba the Hutt in what looks like it's the same location in which where they had the big pod racing event from episode 1, and then that's where they end up performing this song, and then of course Jabba takes a liking to the band and then takes them under their wing or something, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, like Jabba would be like the main sponsor of the group or something. They pretty much make some kind of deal with him, and yeah, that's where it ends. Yeah, this one was definitely I would say the weakest out of all of them.
I mean, I would say there's like a couple others. I would say it's a little bit weaker, but yeah. But
I would one of the one with the droid I think is the main contender for. I mean, I'm not sure which one I didn't care for more, honestly.
Well, that one's later on. So episode 3 titled "The Twins," and of course this is made by Studio Trigger, who of course is famous for making Kill la Kill and Promare. So this, of course, takes a lot of influence from those shows, and of course the art style is definitely evidence from that. So the plot of this episode is just I don't know like where in the time. I would say supposedly sometime after the sequel trilogy, or maybe between. I don't know.
It's not clear for some of these. Like I want to just say it's probably original trilogy timeline. At least it looks like
maybe. So the main characters are twins conceived and cultured by the dark side, named Kari and Am. From what it looks like they were born on Exegol or something like that, because a lot of stuff like reminded me of that. So their mission is like they're both on board like this Gemini class Star Destroyer, which is basically like 2 Star Destroyers like interconnected with each other on the side, and of course it ends up being like a Death Star level looking, killing machine, whatever this is, like always, like what the Empire does. So what happens in this episode is Kari, the brother, ends up stealing the crystal for himself for his own reasons, and then of course his sister ends up getting wind of this, so they end up fighting like pretty much all over the Star Destroyer, which is insane, because like they're in outer space and then they're not even wearing any. They're pretty much exposed in the vacuum of space for majority of this episode.
I didn't really expect Trigger to be restricted by any kind of like realism or anything like that. I expected like when Trigger does anything, you can pretty much expect it's going to be completely over the top, and that's how this episode was. I mean, they're just fighting in space. There's no way for them to breathe. They can somehow breathe in outer space.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of moments that sort of reminded me a lot of what happened in The Last Jedi. I mean, you can clearly see like they were fighting over this kyber crystal, and they of course like the force between them is so great that they end up splitting the kyber crystal in two. And then the brother reveals that
yeah, that was a thing that happened.
Yeah. So like the Kari reveals that he saw a vision of his sister about to be killed by the kyber crystal, and it's the reason why he ended up stealing the crystal in the first place. Of course, he didn't want to tell his sister, because he knew that she wouldn't understand the explanation. But of course, Am doesn't really care, so she ends up absorbing the crystal into her armor, and then it just pretty much makes her armor into this like General Grievous looking like figure, where she has like just 6 different lightsabers all over her body. And then of course Kari ends up fighting her with the last shard of the kyber crystal into his own lightsaber, and then they just pretty much fight on top of the Star Destroyer until Am ends up knocking him off the ship. And then of course by the end of the fight, like Kari ends up getting back on his X-wing, and then just goes pretty much a hold-em maneuver on his sister and the other half of the Star Destroyer.
Yeah, I would say I don't mind that as much with this, because it's not canon, so it doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. But he of course, like you said, he uses that maneuver on her, and also uses his lightsaber to destroy the crystal. And somehow somehow it doesn't hurt her. Of course, just destroys the crystal. So I mean, that's convenient, I guess. But
I mean, it's still completely cuts the one of the Star Destroyers in half. But
she's unharmed.
And then and then like she somehow survives this after soon after her assistant droid ends up saving her from this, and then by the end of this episode, Kare ends up crash landing on Tatooine, and then pretty much like tells this droid that he will end up saving his sister sometime after. So that's where the episode ends, like pretty much on a, I would say, somewhat of a cliffhanger, if you would call it that.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, I thought this was like, I would say, just as good as like the first episode of the anthology. I thought, like I said, like Trigger just pretty much like went all out in this episode with its action and its animation style. And honestly, I would definitely feel that this is deserving of a follow-up episode if they're able to make one.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see a series out of this.
So the next episode is called The Village Bride, and it's made by Cinema Citrus. If nobody knows, it's also the same studio that made The Rising of the Shield Hero. So the episode just pretty much starts us off on like on this unknown planet, and it focuses on a Jedi who survived Order 66 named F, which and of course there's another character. I think he's also a farmer or whatever he is. His name is Valko, and he's also voiced by Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, who's, if nobody knows, he also played Shang Tsung in the Mortal Kombat movie and, of course, in the video game. Okay, so the episode itself, it pretty much focuses on F looking over over this couple who are about to get married, and of course she discovers something relating to them on the planet that she's on, that they're supposedly strong in the Force, or they just call it magica or something like that. And of course the main plot of this episode is that I would say the bride has offered herself to the bandits to save her father, or something like that.
Yeah, they have some deal with the separatists or something, that she would give herself over to them, and we also learned that she's, like, of course, getting married to this guy, and that, like, the marriage ceremony is, like, the last time she's going to be there before she gets taken in by the separatists.
But of course, the bride's sister wants to, fight the bandits, and then, of course, the following morning, before the bride ends up surrendering herself to them, her sister ends up getting caught before the exchange happens. So the bandit leader is about to execute the bride's sister, but of course F ends up stopping it by pretty much like stopping the laser bolt, similar to how Kylo Ren does it.
Yeah. And of course just has it go back to him. And then of course she also has the what did you say his name was again? Like he sniping them.
Valko.
Yeah.
He pretty much ends up sniping the other battle droids, and then ends up using his helmet to of course he plants a bomb in his helmet, and then ends up destroying the ship, which ends up disabling the entire droid squadron or something like that.
Yeah.
And then of course the fight.
I was gonna say too. So the Jedi as well, like she, I guess, decides at one point she was going to help, because I guess this whole time she was just kind of watching the situation and wasn't going to interfere. But then she decides that she was going to help. We also kind of get some flashbacks with her, so like, but we don't really get like her backstory or anything. It seems like we just get these random flashbacks.
I mean, I would say, I would say this is something that happened during Order 66
Probably,
or something like that.
But she has like this mask over her face too, which I guess because she has some kind of, like, we find out later she has like a scar on her face.
Yeah.
But,
well, I guess the reason why she's doing that is because like she's a Jedi and the Empire are hunting her, so she's just she's just trying to hide her identity or something like
Yeah,
that.
and then when she decides she's going to help, she also like cuts her hair, which we see like a couple times too. Like we see this in this episode, and we also see it later on in another one. And I find it interesting because and I didn't know this too, but apparently in Japanese culture, like if cutting your hair is supposed to be symbolic of change. So I guess that's the reason for why you see that sometimes with characters doing that.
Yeah. So the episode ends with F taking down the bandit leader by using her lightsaber, which I'm a bit intrigued of, like, how different anime studios are modeling a lot of these lightsabers into katanas now.
Yeah, it resembles a katana.
Yeah. One thing I also forgot to mention that from the first episode that the Ronin uses is pretty much like he doesn't really activate it like some normal lightsaber. He just keeps it in this sheath in which he just pulls out the blade instead of just activating it.
Yeah, and of course the lightsaber has a katana handle.
But yeah, so the F manages to take down the bandit leader, and then of course by the end of this episode, the villagers and the bride and husband end up thanking her, and so F ends up leaving the planet to, I guess, go off into hiding again.
Mm. Yeah, I thought this was I mean, this was a pretty good one too. Not amazing, but it was decent. I didn't really have any problems
it was a good standalone episode. The animation style was pretty decent, and a lot of the character designs look pretty good as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so the 5th episode, titled "The Ninth Jedi," made by Production IG. This is one of the longer ones that they've made in this anthology. I would say this is like, what? Let me check the length.
It was like 20 minutes.
22 minutes.
22, yeah.
Yeah, almost like a full-length episode. So, I guess the setting of this episode takes place, I would say, generations like into the future. I would say like years and years after the events of Rise of Skywalker or something like that, because what they say is like the Jedi are few and spread apart, and there's no such things as lightsabers anymore. So what this episode is about is like a group of Force wielders across the galaxy end up meeting in this one place so they can retrieve lightsabers in order to restore the Jedi Order. And then the main character of this episode is a character named Kara, whose father is the one who's making these lightsabers. Now, the one thing about these lightsabers that he makes is that they end up changing colors due to the person's morality or force affinity or something like that.
Yeah.
And because like when he first holds it, the blade is initially blue, but then when Kara holds it, it's initially like this, almost like this faded black color whenever she's holding it.
Yeah, didn't he also say like you can change its length and all that too, or you can do some other things with it that
Yeah. So, but soon after, before that they were able to deliver the lightsabers, I would say a group of mercenaries ends up capturing the blacksmith, and only Kara is able to retrieve the lightsabers in order to deliver it herself. So, it leads into like a pretty cool chase scene between Kara and the mercenary, and chasing her. So she ends up fighting back using one of the lightsabers that her father gave her, and then pretty much overpowers, or actually just like takes down one of the hunter's speeder bikes, and then manages to end up escaping.
Mm.
And then of course soon afterwards she manages to get a ride. I would say up to this like giant asteroid orbiting the planet, and then she manages to deliver the lightsabers. But however, like the one big twist ends up happening, which turns out that majority of the Force wielders ends up being Sith acolytes.
Yeah, and apparently they were they're, I guess, hunting down any like remaining Jedi or something.
Yeah,
one of them is not a Sith acolyte. He's actually like, I guess, a light side Jedi.
And then of course the one person that invited all the Force wielders. I think his name is Juro. Manages to take down several of the Dark Jedi themselves, and then this pretty much leads into like a pretty interesting lightsaber fight between all the characters. And then of course you see Kara fighting back, and her actual lightsaber color ends up turning green this time.
Yeah, like I would say my main problem with this episode is just the fact that Kara is able to even fight these Jedi as well as she does. You know, like, and I understand, like, it's not canon or anything, but it's kind of annoying me because, like, I mean, I'm pretty sure even if it wasn't canon, like Jedi, you still need to go through training and all that before you would be able to fight like a trained Jedi. You know, just go toe to toe with a Jedi. So I kind of found that part a little bit like hard to believe.
I mean, well, to be fair, like for Kara, we don't really see her using any Force abilities in this episode.
Oh yeah, I didn't even.
I would say like
she doesn't use the Force at all.
Yeah, I mean, well, like you don't have to be a Force wielder in order to wield a lightsaber. I mean, as we all know, like Moff Gideon can use the dark saber, and possibly even Din Djarin can use the dark saber if whenever we get to see him again.
Well, yeah, but still, she would like. I can believe if she was like to hold off something that wasn't a Jedi, but like. I guess my issue is that she hadn't really gone through any like lightsaber training or anything, not that we know of.
Yeah, I mean, we could speculate that she took some amount of like sword training prior to this, but you know, it never really elaborates much into it. And of course, we also find out that that her father is also like a Force wielder himself, because we saw him deflect a blaster bolt with his hand. So it's possible that that her father ended up training her in some ways, but you know, it never elaborates any further than that. So the episode ends with like all the Jedi end up defeating all the Sith acolytes, and then of course Juro ends up inviting her to become the 9th Jedi to restore the Jedi Order, and then and of course at the same time rescue her father who was kidnapped by one of the Sith mercenaries.
Yeah. So this is another one that seems like they want to do like maybe more episodes with.
I would be interested to see maybe, you know, a follow up to this if it's possible. But yeah, it was a decent episode from Production IG. I thought the action itself was pretty good. I think like one of the second best lightsaber fights next to the duel.
We should mention too, there was another character that apparently like apparently isn't actually a Sith Jedi, because he says he was corrupted by the I guess by the other Jedi or something, because he ends up having like a purple lightsaber.
His like I didn't notice this because like, you know, like I had to watch it a couple times in order to find out, and I did find out that his color changed from red to purple.
Oh, I noticed it the first time. Yeah, but a purple lightsaber, for those who don't know, means like someone apparently, I think it like who straddles the line between the light and the dark. Mace Windu had a purple lightsaber. But so I thought that was kind of an interesting detail. I mean, it definitely seems like some of the people that are, you know, behind these definitely know certain parts of the Star Wars lore and kind of incorporate that into the into these episodes, even if it does like not really acknowledge the canon or continuity or of the movies or anything like that.
I mean, you know, if we could be fair, we could consider this part of the Legends canon storyline if it's possible. But yeah, but like I said, I'd be interested to see like a follow up to the 9th Jedi if that's even possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so next episode called TOB1, made by Science Saru. This has a lot of like, you know, like similarities to Astro Boy, if anything, because and just the entire premise is just a little bit puzzling too, because the episode itself like is about like a droid wanting to become a Jedi or something like that.
Yeah. A droid that was created by, I guess, a scientist, and yeah, he wants to become a Jedi.
Yeah, the scientist himself ends up confirming that he was a Jedi or something like that.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's
This is
just
one of the more
it,
lighthearted
it just
episodes. It definitely feels like, I don't know, like more kiddie, like in comparison to the other stuff. It's
mhm.
yeah, like I didn't really care for the tone as much, to be honest. At least until we got to the part where he does end up fighting a Sith Jedi,
The
or the
Inquisitor at
Inquisitor.
the end of
Yeah,
the episode.
yeah,
Yeah, the last part of the episode of TOP1 fighting the Inquisitor was pretty interesting.
yeah.
And I
Pretty
mean,
much what happens
he
is
does
he ends
have
up signaling, like accidentally sending a signal that the I guess the Imperials intercept and find them and destroy everything, and I guess supposedly end up killing the scientist. And of course, like they come back, and the droid ends up fighting this Inquisitor, and that part of the episode I actually liked. Everything before that, I don't know, I didn't really care much for.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's one of the more light-hearted episodes, but it is just like nothing more to talk about. This it's just a lot of this is just reminds me a lot of Astro Boy, if anything like that. I mean, the designs themselves look similar to Astro Boy,
Yeah.
if anything. Okay, so the next episode called The Elder, also made by Studio Trigger. I mean, it's a much significantly different art style than we saw from the twins.
It's
I mean,
not as over the top as that one either. It's kind of different for Studio Trigger, because a lot of what I see from them, like it is very similar to what we saw with the twins, but this is pretty different. But I thought it was different in a good way. Like I was kind of pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, and it's also influenced by somewhat by from a samurai film or something
Yeah,
like
because
that.
when they arrive on the planet, like everything looks like it's feudal Japan.
So yeah, we find this like master and this Padawan exploring like an unknown planet, and of course the master senses a disturbance in the force, and then soon afterwards, later on in the episode, the Padawan encounters this mysterious elder who ended up being like I guess you could say he was stranded on the planet, or he just arrived on the planet, or who knows. But he turns out he was a part of the Sith Order or something like that, and his lightsabers, of course, like are red katana-looking blades or something like that. So the Elder manages to fight the Padawan and somehow ends up injuring him instead of killing him or something like that. At first, I did think that the Padawan ended up dying, but he somehow ends up surviving by the end of this episode.
Yeah, I actually thought he was dead too when I watched it. So yeah, I was surprised he survived that.
Yeah, so the master and the elder are the ones that end up fighting each other at the end of the episode, and pretty much the fight ends with the master ends up winning against the elder, and the elder ends up like destroying his own ship to cover his tracks, and that's pretty much where the episode ends soon afterwards.
Yeah, I thought it was decent. Like, I mean, there's nothing I could really say I disliked about it. I mean, I thought it was for the most part, I thought it was a good episode. Yeah, like I said, a little bit different for Studio Trigger, but it still looked good. So
yeah, it was okay, but I didn't think it was bad, but it was just okay at best.
Yeah.
So let's see, episode 8 is called Lop and Ocho. So yeah, made by Geno Studios. I think the other, I don't know much about this studio.
They worked on Golden
Kamuy.
Kamuy. I'm not sure. I forget what else they did. They did another anime I saw called Kokoko. I'm not really sure what else they've done. They're a decent animation studio. Like I think they're a fairly small one, but they're pretty good. Like for what I've seen of them. So I figured this one would be a pretty decent one too. Which I thought animation wise, art style wise, like it was pretty good. Like I didn't really have any complaints with the way it looked.
Yeah, I'd say much of this episode is more influenced from the Meiji era. If people don't know what the Meiji era is, it's pretty much like a time in Japan where
The industrial
where feudal
age.
Japan is starting to modernize under the industrial age. So the episode, like the setting of this episode is like it starts off on this planet where it's just like completely underdeveloped, and it starts advancing even more once the Empire showed up. So like the main character of this episode named Lop, who's like I don't know what kind of like alien species she is, almost like some kind of rabbit looking species.
She's like a humanoid little bunny rabbit creature.
Yeah, so she gets adopted by the clan leader Yasuburo, and she becomes like sisters with a daughter Ocho, and then of course like they end up being a family for the next several years. However, like I would say it said 7 years later, the Empire, of course, is starting to exploit the planet's natural resources, and of course, Yasuburo doesn't take a liking to this because it pretty much goes against like their own traditions and all that stuff, similar to like how the samurai have done like when they were modernizing during the Meiji era. However, like the only person in support of this is of course Ocho, who believes the Empire can be beneficial to their planet. And of course, Ocho, no, not Ocho. It's Lop is of course caught in between the feud between the father and daughter.
Yeah, basically, what was it? Ocho had like goes to like make some kind of a deal with the occupying imperial forces, and she also like at this point too, like when she's about to go like I guess make this deal with them that like her father won't continue to because I think they stated like that her father was like trying to rebel against the Imperials, that basically like he wouldn't do it anymore. So pretty much she ends up joining them, like she cuts part of her hair off and ends up joining the Imperials. And Lop pretty much ends up going against her after receiving the family lightsaber that her adoptive father gives to her.
Yeah, like it was initially supposed to go with to Ocho, but because like she joined the Empire, like I don't think like Yasuburo is like finds her worthy to even hold the blade anymore, so she gives it to Lop instead. So Yasuburo ends up going to the Imperial facility to go face off against the Empire, but of course he's stopped by her daughter, who ends up pretty much defeating him in battle and then just permanently blinding him by cutting his remaining good eye. And then of course Lop ends up stepping in and then ends up fighting her sister, pretty much like almost like that she's a Jedi at this point when it's revealed that she has Force powers now.
Yeah. She ends up fighting her, and she fights her and she injures her, but of course it didn't really finish her off. She ends up getting away, and it kind of ends in a weird way in my opinion. Like it ends with her getting away and just Lop looking at the family picture they took. I guess it's just one of those episodes that seems to leave things open for maybe a potential continuation of the story.
Maybe.
Because it really seemed like I thought the way it ended. It's like that's what they were trying to go for, because like it just leaves like it's just not really that conclusive. I mean, maybe more so than the next one, but it still left some things open.
Yeah, I mean, Lop and Ocho, I did like the animation style. Yeah. Overall, I thought it was pretty good in and of itself, and I did like the premise of the episode. Like it takes inspiration from what happened during the Meiji era, but overall, I think I'd be somewhat interested if they did a follow-up episode, if that's even possible. But yeah, so the last episode called Akakiri, made by Science Sorrow, honestly, I don't know how I feel about this episode, to be honest, because it just there was a lot of things that were confusing.
It didn't even feel like a Star Wars thing up until maybe near the end, because until then it just felt like it was on like something else. Because we saw a lot of like bows and arrows and like tribal weapons and stuff.
Yeah, and of course the lightsabers themselves, activate similarly to how the Ronin uses his lightsaber and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But it's just the plot itself. It just left me scratching my head, and also I was tired of getting a little bit tired of watching this due to the fact that I was watching up until like 3 o'clock in the morning at the time. So,
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much watched all of these back to back, so that's kind of how I was starting to feel. I mean, not that they were
Yeah.
bad, but I was like, well, some of them were, but some were better than
yeah,
others.
but there was. I mean, the art style was unique for their characters, but just the plot itself is just questionable. And like I said, it just didn't feel Star Warsy in my opinion. I mean, the main plot is like this Jedi that gets reunited with his girlfriend who's trying to overthrow like the dark side wielding aunt or something like that, and then they end up confronting her, and then the fight just ends in a weird way. Like there wasn't much of a fight; they just clashed blades a couple times, and then like it just goes into like the Jedi like being conflicted with himself, and then just joining the dark side at the end of the episode.
Yeah, like throughout the episode, he was seeing these visions of, I guess, him killing somebody, but he wasn't sure what they meant. And pretty much later on, this seems to, I guess, come to fruition because he's fighting off, I guess, her minions. And one of them ended up being, I guess, his girlfriend, who was dressed up as one of the minions. And yeah, I guess he ended up killing her, or inadvertently killing her. And of course, her sister says that, like, if you want to save her, you have to join me. And he ends up accepting, and I guess getting the ability to, I guess, resurrect her or something, and she comes back to life. And then he just leaves. He ends up going off with her and becoming her apprentice, I guess. And it just kind of ends that way. Like it's funny because like this is the same studio that did the Astro Boy episode, and this feels like a totally like different tone. This feels like a way darker tone in comparison to like the Astro Boy one.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about this. I think it's just one of the weaker episodes of the anthology, in my opinion. It's just I mean, they just slip in like a few Star Wars things here and there, but it just didn't make any sense premise-wise, to be honest.
Yeah, I felt like it was, I don't know. It was probably one of my least favorite ones, to be honest. Like, I didn't know where it was going with the story, and the way it ended off, it's just, it felt like you're just left hanging, and we don't even know if we're going to get any sort of a proper continuation to it. So, like, it just left and it ended in a weird way.
Yeah, but yeah, so that's pretty much all the episodes we have to cover for the anthology.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought like this is a good way for them to finally introduce Star Wars into the anime front for the first time in like ever, I guess. I mean, I did read some like Star Wars related manga, like covering like the original trilogy itself, but this is like this is the first time like they've ever gone into the anime medium.
Well, yeah, like we know that Japan's always been very heavily influenced and inspired by Star Wars. So like a lot of anime and like stuff they make is obviously like kind of like very heavily inspired by it. So it's good that they can like finally show their love for Star Wars, I guess, in the anime medium. But yeah, I thought there was a lot more good episodes in this than bad. So I would say overall, I thought this was decent. And I kind of hope they do like continue it sometime in the future, because I would like to see some like follow-ups to some of these episodes.
Yeah, the executive producer confirmed that it's possible that there may be a second season to this, depending on what what the fan reaction is going to be. I mean, I haven't heard a lot what the fan reaction is right now, but I'm hoping that it'll be positive enough for them to do some follow-up episodes to that's already in this anthology.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, overall, I would say I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I had lower expectations, but I had like kind of, I guess, fairly moderate ones for how this is gonna be. But I came away pretty fairly surprised, but by how much I ended up liking most of these episodes. There were some I didn't care so much for, but I liked more than I didn't like. So yeah, I thought that was definitely interesting for them. Really good, I guess, project to kind of take Star Wars into like the anime medium. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really have to say about this. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I was surprised that Disney Plus allowed it to be released all at once rather than releasing it weekly like their other shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, but out of 10, how would you score this?
I'd probably give it an 8.
Yeah. I definitely agree because, like I said, there were some episodes that were better than others, and honestly, I really do feel like I don't know if they were going into the intention that they might end up making a follow up to some of these episodes, but I really feel like they might end up having to do so, particularly like episodes like the twins or the Ninth Jedi and something like that. But yeah, I would definitely be interested in a follow up to those specific episodes. But yeah, overall, I did like it, and I'd be interested to see if there are any other anime studios that might be interested in making their own set of stories in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to see maybe like Madhouse or Ufotable or like some any other anime studio kind of do their take on Star Wars.
Yeah.
Maybe like
what are your opinions on? Yeah. What are your opinions on the, on the English dub of all these episodes?
I thought they were. I mean, like I thought most of them were pretty good. I don't think there was one that I thought sounded bad. But I didn't really know some of the actors who were voicing some of the characters. I mean, but from what I could tell, they were
a lot of them. Yeah, a lot of the voice actors they've gotten are pretty much Hollywood voice actors rather than
not like anime.
The voice
actors.
Yeah, like rather than the voice actors we're familiar with that work with Crunchyroll or Funimation or something like that. I think Stephanie Sheh is like the only one.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that she was going to be in this.
Yeah, she was the one who voiced the bride's sister in The Village Bride.
Yeah.
But then everyone else is like Simi Liu, who's also the main character of Shang-Chi, also did his voice in The Ninth Jedi, and of course, like I said, Karihiro Yuki Tagawa also voiced. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt played Jay in that Tatooine Rhapsody. Tamora Morrison played Boba Fett again. Neil Patrick Harris voiced Kare, who's the brother of the twins. So I thought they did it. I was a little bit worried at first, but I thought a lot of the voice actors did a decent job in this anthology.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense considering there are Hollywood actors, so that acting comes naturally to them. So I figured, knowing that, it's no surprise that they were all pretty consistently good.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm definitely hoping that, like I said,
I guess we should briefly mention as well, like the soundtrack. Some episodes did reuse the John Williams soundtrack, I noticed. But then some episodes also seem to have their own, I guess, original compositions. I think the first one, I don't know who composed for it, but it really sounded a lot like Ghost in the Shell. At least some tracks did.
Yeah, a lot of the soundtrack is unique to each and every episode. Yeah. I think they used I don't know which what band or what other music they ended up using for them, but it's definitely not John Williams, but some of it is John Williams inspired.
Yeah, because it sounded
episodes.
Really similar to the original soundtrack from the movies. But some things, like I said, sounded like their own original soundtrack they were using.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess unless they, I don't know. Hopefully they do announce another season of this and we see it sometime in the future. But yeah, I thought this was fairly decent. But yeah, don't really have much else to say about it. And then I thought it was decent. But yeah, that being said, until next time, we'll see you all later.